Hello everyone, welcome to next session. This is about the paper discussion on Geography Optional Paper 2, 2021. So we had done previously about the discussion on Paper 1 and now it is about Paper 2. If you look at the Paper 2, Geography Optional Paper 2, to be very honest, the paper was very doable, very easy. Not many challenging questions were there. And we would, if you look at that, if you've looked at the question paper is very general, right? Some expected questions have been asked. Like landslide has been asked in geography paper, in general studies, also in disaster management. And this time, optional also, there's a question on landslides. However, they've touched almost every part of the syllabus, almost every part, but I feel two topics which have not been asked. Number one is RDP, Regional Development and Planning, has not been asked as much as we expect. And also agriculture. There have not been many questions from agriculture, like very general questions from agriculture or overall paper 2. Climate has not been asked. There are not many questions from climate. And if you see the pattern of the question, it is very general, which is very much related or very close to the environmental aspect. So contemporary and applied aspect is more into this topic. And you would find that this particular topic, this particular question paper is easy, right? But what I feel is it's a little more challenging to score in such questions, because in a general question paper, everyone writes almost similar points, right? So the competition level is relatively higher. But then the point is, how do you make your questions, how do you make your answers better than others? Your answers should show maturity, your answers should show information, your answers should also reflect a very good understanding of geography. Right? Let's discuss some of the questions. So this is Geography Optional 2021. And here we are with one of the first, I'm excluding map here, map entries. So the first question that we were supposed to write is, discuss geopolitical impact of bilateral relations between India and Bhutan. You see, this is again one of the expected questions so far as the Bhutan and India relations are concerned, or geopolitical aspect is concerned. The question here demands geopolitical impact, right? Geopolitical impact. And all those who have studied geopolitics, like in paper 1, also India's relation with neighboring countries in paper 2, they can understand the geopolitical, and it's not something very difficult. Nowadays in geography, we don't use international relations term so much. We generally refer to geopolitical relations or geopolitical aspects, because to a great extent, the political aspects are determined by the geographical conditions. So how do they influence the political relations? Right? That is what we have to understand, the geopolitical impact in this case. Now, so far as the bilateral relations of India-Bhutan is concerned, we know that it's a very cordial relationship, a very happy marriage kind of relationship between India and Bhutan. It's like after independence, Bhutan was the first country to recognize India as a free country, recognize India as a nation. And besides that, Bhutan was also among the first countries to have signed friendship treaty with India. So first of all, we will write little bit about the historical aspect of India and Bhutan. Historical aspect, such as, the Buddhism prevailing in Bhutan. And since then, since ancient times, there is a movement between India and Bhutan, but political aspects, since the bilateral relations are concerned, so we can write right from the independence of India. Right, independence of India. And Bhutan was the first country to recognize India as a free country. Then the next aspect is about the friendship treaty between the two nations. Friendship treaty. And we know under this treaty signed in 1948, this friendship treaty is more focused, rather the friendship treaty was maintaining the foreign relations. India would be, rather the foreign relations of Bhutan are under the supervision of India. India's investment in hydroelectric power projects, right? Both citizens of both countries will be treated equally. And also, what is very important to understand, the closeness of India and Bhutan and what is its geopolitical relations. So first part of the answer should be about the friendship treaty and focused mainly on the aspects as in the foreign relation of Bhutan or foreign affairs of Bhutan under Indian supervision as per the treaty. Supervision. The cordial relation that both countries will develop. Cordial relation, and they have developed over the period of time. India's investment in hydroelectric power generation, the equal treatment of citizen of both countries, right, both the sides. Right, these are major aspects of relationship between India and Bhutan, and this relationship goes better and better with time. And geopolitical impact. Now we know that between the two aspects here, it is a buffer state between India and China. Obviously, the hostilities of these two countries are well known, and Bhutan always acts as a buffer state between the two nations. But what is advantage that India enjoys is, has a bend towards India. The recent, problems between India and China related to Doklam, recent in Chumbi Valley. These are very critical or strategic points or strategic locations for India. So therefore, having presence of Bhutan, where India, Bhutan and China, they meet, that is also important. It also shares its boundaries. Bhutan also shares its boundaries with some of the Indian states, especially Sikkim, Assam, West Bengal. Right, so strategically very important. This region, because it's very close to the chicken neck. A stable Bhutan is always is always good for India, because India will always have an advantage of that. Otherwise, the Bhutan region, this region can also be used for anti-Indian activities, and infiltration can take place towards India, as it shares a boundary with some of the strategic locations of India, including that chicken neck. So this is what is the geopolitical significance of the region. Strategic location, strategic significance, and the region, the state acting as a buffer zone for India. Next question is, again, it comes back to the typical geography question. Discuss the economic significance of volcanic soils of India. Ab volcanic soils kahan hai? Where do we have volcanic soils in India? Volcanic soils of India are largely confined to the Deccan Plateau. Confined to Deccan Plateau. And now, how do we make it different than that? Because the same question can be asked in the general studies also. Now, how do we make it geography optional question? You need to write little more about the accumulation of volcanic soils of India. As in, we'll write about Deccan Plateau, right, formed in Cretaceous period, and also about the hotspot activity, and we can also name Reunion hotspot as one of the hotspots of the same activity of the rather one of the series of hotspots from where the Deccan origin or Deccan Plateau might have originated, right? And this is the first aspect about volcanic soils of India that we know. Located in Deccan Plateau, Cretaceous period, and the hotspot activity. Then, how are these soils so significant, economically significant? Right, soils have the economic significance anyways because they support a huge range of agriculture. So, if you have to define soils is defined as the upper disintegrated part of lithosphere with organic and inorganic content, and that can support the growth of plants. So it anyways has an economic significance. So since it has an economic significance related to agriculture, so here what we expect, another point that is important to understand, the significance of volcanic soils in agriculture. Which agriculture? The cash crop agriculture, cotton and sugarcane. Cotton and sugarcane cultivation. Now, you need to understand why volcanic soils. To understand that, you must have read about black soil, you must have read about black soil, or also called as ragoor soil, and self-plowed soils and others. We'll write first about the mineral composition of the soil. Mineral composition of the soil, which is rich in titaniferous minerals. Rich in titaniferous minerals, right? Has relatively lesser content of silica, that's why it is black. And we know generally in the basic lava that's darker in appearance, has a lesser silica content. So they have, these minerals are having lesser silica. We can also write one of the drawback here is that the region also has less organic content in lime, but no need to write because it's about the significance. So we'll not write about it. So, and we're writing the mineral composition of this region, of the soil. Another aspect is that this region, this particular soil, has very fine texture. Has a very fine texture, right? Very fine grains. The fine texture helps to absorb water and retain it. Retain the water for longer duration of time. And that's also the reason why the soil becomes waterlogged. The soil becomes waterlogged. So waterlogged soil, sticky, which is the best quality for the sowing of cotton. Cotton and sugarcane cultivation, they require a waterlogged condition at the time of sowing, but require a drier condition for the time of harvest. So for a very long duration of time, this black soil, because it has a higher water retention, provides the water to the plant, provides water to the crop. As cotton does not require more moisture in the atmosphere, it requires more moisture in the soil, so there will be constant supply of the moisture to the plants. And since it can retain water for a longer duration, it will absorb water for a longer duration. So this is another aspect. So first aspect is its origin. The second point we'll write about agriculture, and third is about how important is this agriculture, like why soil supports this kind of agriculture, that is cotton based agriculture. Then we'll also go a little bit deeper into it, and we'll understand that since the economic significance also includes other aspects, as in the agri-export. Cotton textile forms one of the largest composition in the agri-export. Also, this region, it is because of the same that huge amount of this textile industry is located, especially the cotton textile industry is located in the region, and it is the second largest employment provider. Cotton textile industry is the second largest employment provider in organized sector in India. So it is because of volcanic soils that there are rich minerals, and those minerals are, the soil is very supportive. It helps in the growth of or production of cotton. Cotton supports cotton industries. Cotton industries are one of the largest employment provider, and also plays a very important role in the agri-export. Right? Overall, textile provides employment to 45 crores, like 45 million population. So 45 million population is a huge population. A majority of that is in the cotton textile. This is because of the black soil. Right? These are some important points as you can think of. Or to reflect on this particular question in the exam scenario is not that easy, because we can understand the general significance of soil or aspects like that, but volcanic soil ka economic significance thoda time lagega. It will take some time for you to strategize your answer, but it's quite possible. It's gettable, not very difficult. Then the next aspect. Now, this is another question from industries, and if you look at even the prelims question papers, general studies question papers, such questions have been frequently asked. इस तरह के questions का frequency बहुत ज़्यादा हो चुका है in even the prelims. The question is, give a reasoned account, right? A reasoned account of the difference between sugar industries of North and Peninsular India. The context of the question is that you can see the industries being shifted towards South India, southern part of India, or the Peninsular India. The sugar mills, there is a kind of shift towards southern India, especially in Tamil Nadu, also in other areas like Karnataka and other states. Maharashtra anyways is one of the major sugar mill centers. Although Uttar Pradesh is the highest producer of sugar, no doubt, and sugar cane as well because of the larger area. But so if the industrial base is shifting to the south, obviously this one question should come, like we should think on this. Why is it, what is the difference between the sugar mills or sugar industries in the northern part of India and in the southern part of India? Is the processing different? No, the processing is more or less the same. Right? Same crushing of sugar cane is done, and the byproducts like jaggery, molasses, sugar is extracted out of this. Yes, the molasses is although used for the blending of petroleum for making bioethanol, that is also there. So why then there's a continuous shift towards south? What is the difference between the northern regions and the southern regions or industries? Processing is the same. Basic process of sugar, crushing is the same. Then what is the difference? And reasoned account. This question has also been asked in the prelims. This question has also been or can be asked in the general studies. If you see 2013 or 14 question, there was a question on the sugar mills shifting towards southern part of India. What is the reason for that? So difference. See, let's try to generate points on this. In the northern part of India, there is a seasonal fluctuation in temperature and rainfall and overall scenarios, right? What we see in the northern part of India, because of the changing seasons in northern part, there is a lesser crushing time period of sugarcane. Whereas here, the crushing of sugarcane in the southern part of India or in the peninsular part of India, the crushing of sugarcane is done throughout the year. This is also true for other industries, other agro-based industries. क्योंकि सदर्न पार्ट ऑफ इंडिया या पेनिनसुलर इंडिया में टेम्परेचर चेंजेस नहीं होता, द विंटर टेम्परेचर डज नॉट सिग्निफिकेंटली ड्रॉप और द कंडीशंस रिमेन मोर और लेस द सेम. So it is because of the less seasonal effect, the crushing can be done throughout the year. One second, if we look at the overall sucrose content here in the northern part, lesser sucrose content of the sugarcane, and therefore industries will also not be producing higher content of sugar, and here it has a higher sucrose content. In the winter period, in the winter season, the growth is limited. The growth of sugarcane is limited. Right? It is because temperature changes and all that. This is a tropical crop. But in southern India, it doesn't change. A tropical crop, suitable conditions for it to grow. So therefore, it grows with a higher sucrose content. फिर next point पे देखें अगर हम, in southern India, especially in the peninsular India, molasses, a huge quantity of molasses is converted into bioethanol. Whereas here in the northern part of India, lesser conversion, almost negligible conversion. And industries are definitely the raw material driven industries. But they are raw material driven industries. So therefore the location of industries would be very close to the raw material. It's very difficult to transport sugarcane, and it's easy to transport sugar or the products, and hence as the sugarcane production increased in the southern part of India or peninsular part of India after Green Revolution, this industries were also attracted towards peninsular India. Right, that's one of the major difference between the sugar and sugarcane and sugar industries that we see in the northern part and peninsular part of India. And also overall sugar production, India is the second largest producer of sugar in the world after Brazil, and lot of mills in the northern part they were shut down. The reason for the shutting down of mills were that the cost of production was high. With a very high cost of production, the mill owners could not get the profit because the input cost was very high and the profit margin therefore reduces. So a lot of them had given they had given subsidies. The government has given subsidies and also export subsidies so that they can earn the profit, and the cost of production, the market prices reach up to the cost of production. Because so much of production was there in 2014-15, there was so much of production of sugar in India that supply was very high and the overall market value or market price decreased. this fluctuation happened in the northern part of India more than the southern part of India, right? And this is what are the major aspects of difference between the sugar industries of northern and peninsular part of India. Then is the question number 2, which has the part 1, and question number 1, we know that you're supposed to write, compulsory question. First, look at the question. Landslide is a major problem in Himalayan region. Discuss its causes and mitigation measures. Ye landslide question, it was also in your in Janissary's paper. It was also there in disaster management, and it is also there in the optional. So landslides पर UPSC का focus है, और ऐसा नहीं है कि ये पहली बार आया है. This has happened, this has been repeated 3 to 4 times. There was also a question in between the Western Ghats and Himalayas. Why Himalayas experience more landslides than Western Ghats? It was asked, previously it has been asked. This year, General Studies also, there was a difference between Western Ghats and Himalayas. There are landslides between the two regions. In this question, now how do we make it, the optional answer? Landslide is a major problem in Himalayan regions. Discuss its causes. So, we'll write the definition of landslides first. Definition of landslides. As in, it's a type of mass wasting. So we'll write about that broken rocks or disintegrated rocks, soil particles and debris, when moved along with the gravity, is called as mass wasting. And slide is a type of mass wasting. Along with earthfall, soil creep, right, landslide and flow. So out of the mass wasting, we are talking about landslides. Understand that you need to write about this, that mass wasting also has, it's a type of mass wasting, which is the movement which includes fall, rock fall, which includes flow, which includes slide, and which includes creep. So creep is not a major problem. Fall also happens without water, and it happens rapidly along with the gravity. Flow is when the water is saturated, and slide is when the water is present in the underlying layers and water percolates to sublayers. So ye mass wasting ke 4 movements. And what is the main, except for the flow, except for the fall, if you look at these 3, what is the main agent of movement? It is the presence of water. So we'll write about mass wasting, give the definition of a landslide, discuss that it's a type of mass wasting, and mass wasting has the flow, slide, creep, and so on. Right? Different forms hai mass wasting. Uske baad, once we are done with the mass waste, defined definition of landslides, the causes, let's straight away come to the cause of the landslides in Himalayas. First is that it is located at a convergent plate boundary. It is located at the convergent plate boundary. And along the convergent plate boundaries, right, as we see in this convergent plate boundaries, they are tectonically very active, right, tectonically active, and which has led to frequent earthquakes, and you can also probably write the seismic zone 5 and seismic zone 1. Some of that Himalayan regions fall under the seismic zone 5 and some of them fall under seismic zone 4. Right. Second point is that there are many fault lines in Himalayas. Fault lines are weaker zones. These are weaker zones where there's a huge shear stress or that tension on the rocks, rather stress on the rocks, not tension, stress on the rocks, and many fault lines. And we need to explain these fault lines or describe these fault lines, like main central thrust between Greater Himalayas and Middle Himalayas, main boundary fault, MBF, between Middle Himalayas and Shivaliks. Then Himalayan frontal fault, And you can also name few places where the faults are, like Copley fault is example, Lansdowne fault is another example. There are a lot of other fault lines like Doon faults are there. So you can name some places. If you can name some places, it will be very good. Even if you do not name some places, it's okay, but do not mention MCT and MBF, right? They are important. Then, and along these fault lines, they have been created by shear stress. Right? Shear stress. So these are natural causes that we are describing. So you can also take a heading, natural causes of landslides, earthquakes. Another natural cause of landslides is also associated with the glacial activities. Glacial and periglacial activities. वो जो glacial और periglacial activities है, we can use the term cryoturbation, that causes that freeze and thaw action, and due to that freeze and thaw action, there's a weaker rocks, and due to the presence of these weaker rocks, water percolation can take place. So there's a freeze and thaw action that is similar to what we discussed in the previous case in the planation as well, right? Altiplanation as well. So cryoturbation, right? Then other terms that can lead to this is congelifluction, which is called as solifluction when the water is saturated, but with the when ice triggers this kind of a movement, congelifluction. So this all happens in the higher reaches of Himalayas, which are glacial and periglacial areas. We know the larger part of the Greater Himalayas are periglacial areas, and Middle Himalayas glacial areas. During the winters they remain under the ice. So in these conditions, cryoturbations and congelifluction process does happen that triggers more earthquakes. Then another natural reason is the presence of sedimentary rocks, and these sedimentary rocks are highly porous. They have a very high degree of porosity. But we know that sedimentary rocks are found mainly in the Shivalik belt. You will write that composition of rock is also very important natural factor, because that as Davis has said, or as in geomorphology we discuss this, that structure is the most dominant factor controlling the landform development or controlling the process also at times. The lithology does play an important role in the process of erosion. And what kind of lithology is this? The composition of rocks. We know Greater and Middle Himalayas are composed of schist and gneiss largely, or metamorphic rocks, but Shivalik is composed of sedimentary rocks. And in the sedimentary rocks, the porosity is slightly higher, and that causes percolation of water and can lead to the landslides. अब हम anthropogenic reasons में आते हैं. Right? We can discuss the anthropogenic reasons by just adding one line. Anthropogenic reasons by just adding one line, that across the world it is the human factors that are intensifying the disasters. It is the anthropogenic activities that have accelerated the impact of natural disasters. And here in the landslides, it is the same. Like same in the case of landslides as well, like anthropogenic activities, that is rampant deforestation that has happened in Himalayas, have increased the chances or incidence of landslides. The construction that has happened in the region, that is being done for the road construction and the dams, etc., deforestation, construction activities, that have triggered, that have increased the intensity of these landslides here. Now, how to rectify this? What should be done? Because the next part of your question demands mitigation measures. Right, so पहला part में हम इसको classify कर सकते हैं. So this is one way of writing answer. Another way of writing answer is, in fact, the better way of writing answer is you divide these into headings. As we have just said, that headings में natural factors लिख सकते हैं आप, the causes, and anthropogenic. Natural factors can further be divided as the physical factors, like climatic factors. Right, physical factors. You can, in physical factors such as earthquakes, such as the composition of rocks. Climatic factors like glaciation and periglaciation. Other factors like, the area, the slope. Then anthropogenic factors. Right? In anthropogenic factors, you can write the developmental works that happens in construction and so on that are triggering. Now, mitigation aspects. See, mitigation here, obviously, one of the way to conserve the landslide, reduce the landslides, is that if we do construction by creating walls, right? Those walls which are helpful to prevent the slides or reduce the landslides, incidence of landslides, like which are the retaining walls, right? Retaining walls by afforestation activities. Increasing forest cover obviously will reduce the incidence of landslides in the region. Also, what is very important, if you read the NDMA guidelines, National Disaster Management Authority guidelines, there is a hazard mapping that is done in the region. Hazard mapping. Now, here, what additional can you write here is you can present a map. And in the map, you will show the regions which are more affected by the landslides. Himalayas, Western Ghats, some parts of Eastern Ghats, the central region. So, a map drawing will be very, very, very crucial in your optionals. Right? Try to draw the map as fast as it is possible. It's not a cartographic map, just a representation. So you can represent your maps easily. Right? Something of this like is okay. Then in the northern parts, you can see these are the areas which are highly sensitive, highly prone to landslides. So high to very high impact. This is the condition in the Himalayan region, all across Himalayas till eastern part. They're prone to landslides. Other regions of landslides also Western Ghats, right, in the central regions and Eastern Ghats. But since it is not asked about the other areas, we'll just show that in the what is the hazard mapping. The regions which are All the regions which have the higher incidence or frequency of landslides should be mapped so that construction activities should also be designed according to the hazard mapping. Right? Now, local authorities can also play an important role in ensuring that more and more forest coverage is increased in Himalayan states, right? Which can ensure the percolation, which can ensure the more absorption of water and less runoff. Right? Some of the mitigation effects, I guess you can mention these. That is not something like we can, not right. So drainage control and other things can also be done using the local support. So this is the first question. Okay. अब एक और क्वेश्चन आता है, appraise why drought is one of the most common climatic extremes in India. One of the most climatic extreme. Catch this point. And why is it so? That means when we are writing one of the most climatic extreme, there are other climatic extremes also. So in the introduction itself, in the first line itself, we can mention about this, that there are many extreme climatic conditions or extreme weather conditions in India, which largely are associated with high and low rainfall, associated with unevenness of rainfall, associated with vagaries of monsoon, anything like that you can start with, right? So climatic extremes you can write, extreme events such as floods, droughts, cyclones, cloudbursts are associated or outcomes of uneven distribution of monsoon or distribution of rainfall. Right? This is one aspect we can start with, uneven distribution of rainfall. And along with it, the vagaries of monsoon add to the problems. Now, out of which droughts are most common. Why is it most common than floods or cyclones? So you can write the areal extent, most common, covering around or occurring in around 1/3 area of India. Right? So ये एक point है. Floods 40 million hectares में आता है. Cyclones is also limited. Climatic condition like cloudburst also have a local or regional effect. But droughts, if you look at the droughts, 1/3 area of India is the drought-prone area of India, including the peninsular part, including the western region, including in Himalayas, Bundelkhand region, Malwa region. So it's a widespread climatic extreme event. So this is how we can probably understand why is it so important. Now so अब हमें why लिखना है. Why is it drought? Before we go to drought, it's also important to mention the definition of drought. Right? Definition of drought. As per IMD, general, अगर आपने पढ़ा है drought के बारे में, I'm sure you must have read about drought. And a condition when the rainfall is less than the normal condition is called as a drought. Right? It's called as drought. If the rainfall is less than 75% of the normal rainfall, extreme droughts, which is also referred as a meteorological drought. But if we go by Indian Meteorological Department, you can write, according to IMD, the drought is called as deficit year, or drought year is called as a deficit year if rainfall is less than 75% or rather if the deficit is more than 10% of the average rainfall and extends up to 20% of area, that's called as a drought or deficit year. अब यही percentage 10% है and it extends up to like 40% or more than that of area, that is called as all India drought year. So एक definition, just one definition is good enough of the drought. Like if the rainfall fluctuates more than 10% or if it is deficit 10% in around 20% area, then it is called as a drought year or drought, this deficit year. We can also have the definitions of like meteorological drought. तो ये definition देने के बाद एक बार questions को देखिए. Please, why drought is one of the most common? Okay. Now, why is it more common? Is because India largely is tropical, right? The southern part is tropical and the northern part is subtropical. And in the subtropical region, there is dryness. Dryness prevails in the subtropical high pressure conditions, which is there in the northern part like Gujarat, Rajasthan, northern plains of India. There is a dry condition due to the subtropical high pressure. So largely a drier conditions hoga. If the monsoon doesn't occur, India would have been a desert. We know that, and Himalayas would not have been there. India would have been a desert. So without Himalayas, right, it's largely a subtropical areas. So that makes it drier. Then its dependency on monsoon. The region is highly dependent on monsoon. Dependency on monsoon. And monsoon being uneven. Vagaries of monsoon, unevenness of monsoon, as it is dependent upon many factors. As monsoon is very sensitive. So अब हम monsoon पे चलेंगे और देखेंगे कि some factors which affect monsoon, because that is the main main cause of rainfall in India, right? More than 80% of rainfall that India receives comes from the monsoon. We'll mention this. And any climatic abnormalities anywhere, even in the Atlantic Ocean, Pacific Ocean, Indian Ocean, is affecting monsoon. So यहाँ पर हम लिखेंगे monsoon being very sensitive, uneven, because it is very sensitive to climate changes. Very sensitive to climate changes. Taking an example, या climate change अगर नहीं लिखना चाहते हैं अभी आप, तो you can also write sensitive to weather conditions or weather changes. What do we mean by weather changes or weather conditions? Like any change in the weather of Eastern Pacific, like El Nino, has an effect on India. If there is a negative Indian Ocean dipole, that influences monsoon. If there is a change in North Atlantic winds, there is a change in monsoon. So यहाँ पर हम कुछ examples लिखेंगे. Which examples? Examples that affect monsoonal pattern. Right? Affects monsoonal pattern. Like El Nino affects monsoon to a great extent, right? Indian Ocean dipole is very sensitive. Apart from that, changes in the Atlantic Ocean condition. Atlantic Ocean plays an important role. So ये सारे factors, like all these factors needs a good mention. You need to write about it. Then comes the next point, next aspect, right? Why is it aspect? अब हम climate change लाएंगे. Climate change. The climatic changes are also making India more prone to droughts, like events across the world, more evaporation, more evapotranspiration leading to dryness, and also if the glaciation or glaciers are melting, the long-term effect of the glacier melt can be the decrease in water content, or overall the water volume in Indian rivers will reduce, especially Himalayan rivers. Right? ऐसे कुछ points of लिखेंगे which is directly associated with the climatic changes and having an influence. You would also see, because of the the huge population, now we'll come to the next point, that the dependency on population. हालांकि I mean you won't see, although a direct influence has been asked or impact of population has been asked, but वो population का point लिखना बहुत जरूरी है. क्यों? Because it is the higher population that is dependent on water supplies, and India, being an agricultural region, has more water consumption. Right? We require huge amount of water, nearly 600 billion cubic meters of water for irrigation. Right? So impact or the stress of water is maximum in India, and that is why droughts are so frequent in India. So the first and very important point is the subtropical, which a lot of people might miss, that it's a subtropical region. In a subtropical condition, the dryness is more often. Dependency on monsoon, and monsoon being uneven, right, is sensitive to weather conditions, and then the effect of climate change. Next, again, related to the same, discuss ecological and economic challenges of river linking in India. Ecological and economic challenges. This question has a very broad connotation and can also be asked, discuss the challenges associated with the river linking or interlinking of rivers in India. ये वैसे भी पूछा जा सकता है, otherwise also like full question can be asked on challenges associated with the interlinking of rivers in India. Right? So, but since this ecological and economic challenge has been categorically mentioned, so interlinking of rivers, so we'll write a little bit about the introduction part of it, that interlinking of the river is one of the most ambitious project right? India is endowed with so many reserves, so much of water resources, and interlinking being most ambitious project of India, which can have an influence or which can reduce floods or which can be a solution for floods and droughts. Both floods and droughts. It's a major project. Then next point, next aspect that is associated with the same, the historical account देने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. We don't have to give the historical account here, or no need that it was given by the concept comes from Arthur Cotton, a British surveyor, and then it was in the independent India 1972 onwards. The interlinking project has been one of the most ambitious project. So we'll write about it. Most ambitious and very important to control floods and droughts in India, although the concept was from British surveyor. It poses a lot of challenges. So after having introduced its significance in one line, that floods and droughts, it can help us to control floods and droughts, and also will increase the agriculture productivity in hydroelectric power generation. It has so many challenges. It comes with a lot of challenges, out of which the ecological and environmental challenges. First is the submergence. First ecological challenge is the submergence of forest land. Submergence of forest land. Like there was a part of forest which got submerged with this Parthapi link. Part of forest may get linked with may get submerged if the the link is done between the Manas and Sankosh, the Manas Reserve National Park. A part of these reserves may get submerged if the water linkage is done, because for the linking of rivers, dam is constructed, the water level increases, submerging the land in the nearby region, and due to the submergence of land, we may lose huge amount of forest cover. Right? Huge amount of forest cover. Next aspect, right? Submergence. Also, it can also lead to erosions, soil erosion. Erosion of soil. Why is it so? It's because canal construction will be done. Like when we have to link the rivers or link rivers, a lot of canals will be needed to link these rivers, and that can trigger a higher degree of soil erosion, a higher amount of soil erosion. Now, with all this, biodiversity is threatened. Is threatened. Economic challenge, right? We'll further come to later, like ecological challenge. Now, if you see the long-term effect of this ecological challenge is that if we use more water on the continents, the discharge of water will reduce towards Bay of Bengal, because most of Indian rivers are draining into Bay of Bengal. 90% of volume of Indian rivers drain in Bay of Bengal. Right? So if 90% of volume is draining in Bay of Bengal, and majority of that is used on the continent. Right? Majority of that is used on the continent. This can increase the salinity of Bay of Bengal, and can affect the aquatic life of the region. Right? Aquatic life of the region will be affected, obviously, if the salinity changes. Right? It will be affected. Besides that, if we look at the long-term effect, which is related to the climate, higher salinity reduces rate of evaporation. So we may have a reduced evaporational rate and reduced rainfall because of the increase in salinity in Bay of Bengal. So that can also be one of the outcome of the same. But, right, so this is aspect. Now coming to the economic challenges, what is the economic challenge? First is the financial cost involved in it. Financial cost involved in it. Right. There are different committees, like earlier 2002, a Piyush Goyal committee was set up when Supreme Court, Honorable Supreme Court had given directives to the Government of India to come up with a report or come up with a blueprint to develop this national water grid plan. And the first one of the recommendation was that it will incur a huge financial cost. It will be a huge financial burden. Then apart from this financial cost, see, the mobilization of funds will also be a very difficult task. Mobilization of financial resources. Because it is not only the construction of dams, but also the resettlement of a huge population. This is also one of the economic challenges. How are we planning to resettle the population which will get displaced because of the raising of heights of the dams? because it is a tribal population which will get submerged. The tribal areas will get submerged. The tribal population has to resettle. The population in the northern plains will have to resettle. So another financial burden, financial challenge is resettlement of this huge population. Resettlement of this huge population. So this is also one of the major aspects that we need to consider. So challenges लिखने के बाद, towards the end we also have to give some solutions. What is the way out? Now, national water grid, or these interlinking on a large scale is very difficult, but yes, micro water grids, intra-state, that intra-district linkages, inter-district linkages can be worked upon. The smaller level grids or smaller level linkages can be worked upon so that the impact is least. Plantation of trees or lining of canals using these, those plants, or planting more trees along the banks of the lakes, along the bank of the canals, so that erosion rate can be reduced. Integrating solar production or solar power plants with the canal irrigation. So solar panels can reduce the evaporation and can also reduce the soil erosion to some extent, because the impact of the wind can also be reduced by that. So some solutions we need to mention at the end, because it's a very important program. And question number 3 is about discuss importance of solar energy in the future economic development of India. And other than solar energy, the question can also be asked related to any renewable source of energy. Right? Any renewable source of energy. And this is about solar energy. The context of question is India's determination to reduce carbon emission, India's developing economy, industrialization, and the very important context, India is energy deficit country. India is an energy deficit country. The resources are limited. Right? Resources are quite limited. In that scenario, what should be done? So here, understand the context. So importance hai, there is huge importance of the solar energy. We can start with this, that a developing economy like India requires huge amount of energy. Right? A developing economy like India requires energy for industrial growth, right? For industrial growth and overall development, overall growth, right? Overall growth. And India has very limited reserves, limited energy reserves, like coal, like petroleum is very limited. Nuclear energy also limited. We have very limited amount of uranium. And in this scenario, one of the option is renewable sources of energy. Renewable sources of energy. And India having around 300 days of sunshine, or India has abundant sunshine, especially 300 days is not fixed, but then just an idea that sunshine, because it's a tropical nation, tropical country, tropical country has huge potential of solar energy which can support the economic development. So you can potential of solar energy, you can write that point because India is a tropical nation. So potential of solar energy, and because of that huge potential, the region it can support the economic development. Now, what all other dimensions can we link? So this is probably the first line or the most introductional aspect or introduction that you can mention, that there are different aspects: industrial growth, energy deficit, solar one of the option, and India being tropical can play a very has a huge solar energy potential and can play a very significant role in economic development. Now going on to this next point here, you have mentioned about the solar potential and everything. Now we'll also add probably one line here which is quite important, is the Paris Agreement. Right? ये हमें mention करना है इन शुरुआत में भी और end भी हम इससे करेंगे. Coming to the economic aspect, what is India's target? Let's write about that. That also needs to be mentioned, that by 2022 India has to achieve 100 gigawatts of solar energy by 2022, for which there are aspects of 40 gigawatts to be done by rooftops and 60 gigawatts otherwise commercial production. Some idea has to be mentioned because this is what India is pledged. India has to work upon it. Now, so far as the economic significance are concerned, now we can write generation of electricity, of course, right, in which we can mention this data, electricity generation, which is the backbone of any economic development. Electricity generation is the backbone of any development, right? Industries or any economic development. So mention about it. Then we can also mention one important point, that India has a huge potential for solar. International Renewable Energy Agency has projected that this energy can provide employment to 150,000 people in India. It can generate at least 115,000 employment in India, and this projection was in 2018 and it is going to get increased. एक और aspect देखेंगे आप, that all the solar panels, equipments, right, these inverters, batteries, etc., whatever are required, are imported mainly from China. Now we can generate our own, right? India can manufacture, right, all of these, and this will reduce import from China and also other countries like Indonesia as well, but then largely from China. This will again be an economic significance. So there is energy significance. There is second aspect is the employment. Third aspect is that we can reduce our import burden, and we can go little more towards the export as well if we can generate this. We can produce on our own. Apart from that, the overall carbon emission will also reduce. Carbon emission can also reduce. So the carbon trading, and as India has pledged Paris Agreement, there's intended nationally determined goals that India will achieve at least 100 gigawatts of electricity generation. And we know that we have to increase this in renewable sources of energy generation, by 2030, right? Maximum to our installed capacity. So targets like sakte or can end this topic. If it was an ecological aspect, the question was quite easy, right? Then the question would have been much easy. It says in the future economic development of India. So the future economic development of India lies in the renewable source of energy. You will have to mention this because India will have to shift its energy consumption pattern. Right? India has to change the way we have been looking at the energy or consuming the energy so far. It starts with the production of energy. Right? So solar energy can be one of that. And usko link karna economy ke saath is bit challenge. There were some articles mentioned in newspapers. Indian Express में एक बार एक article आया था इससे related solar energy and economic development of India, and it was also a renewable source of energy and economic development of India. So it was basically in that context that the question was asked. The next question is, I guess it's very easy. It doesn't need much, suggestions or discussions. Question is, critically examine the importance of smart city program for solving the urban problems of India. So, once you write about the smart cities, or when you're taking this question, in the background, some urban problems should run. What are the major urban problems? You should keep thinking about that. Housing is a major urban problem, right? Housing issues, slums, accumulation of slums. Pollution is one of the major urban issues. Then overpopulation or burden leading to housing problems that can also be associated here. Traffic congestions can also be one of the major problems. Nowadays, floods and improper drainage system is also one of the major urban problems. So these should run through your background, like in the mind. And then how smart cities are, because smart city has this basic or underlying principle which says work for all, house for all. All the facilities should be available within a distance of or a drive of 45 minutes, all the basic facilities. It focuses on all types of infrastructures, like the social infrastructure, right? Developing the infrastructures, like the social infrastructure, like the physical infrastructure, right? The economic infrastructure, right? Social infrastructure like health services, like schools, like housing, providing housing to all, right? Physical infrastructure like connectivity, economic infrastructure like employment opportunities, right? So these are some of the aspects that you can always link it with. And also some government schemes that you can associate smart cities with, like Aadha Awas Yojnas, focusing on housing, urban housing development and all that. New urbanization policy focusing on the development of housing, economic, along with the ecological or environmental benefits. Focusing on increasing private investment in small towns so that migration reduces towards the bigger cities or mega cities. And one more aspect towards the conclusion you need to write, that smart cities cannot be a solution if the migration towards urban areas will keep on taking place at the same rate. Smart cities can exist along with smart villages, right? Smart villages. So unless we have smart villages, smart cities, it's difficult to manage smart cities, because the rural to urban migration will keep on taking place, and that can keep adding pressure to these cities. Right? This is second. Then we have about ecotourism. Examine the significance of ecotourism in relation to socio-economic development and biodiversity conservation in India. You see, the focus of examiner this year, like all the questions, have been mainly on ecological aspect, those applied aspect, if you can put it in this way. It's mainly on the economic aspect, the applied aspect, or not just economic aspect, but also applied aspect. यहाँ पर tourism पर question पूछा है, tourism में भी ecotourism पूछा. Like the question is about ecotourism in relation to the socio-economic development of and biodiversity conservation. Question is not just about tourism, helpful for the economic development or something of that sort. No, the focus is socio-economic development, biodiversity conservation. So what happens is, if the question paper is like this, it gets repetitive. Most of our answers, there's a tendency that we may bring the repetitive answers, and because of that repetition, sometimes the impact of the answer may reduce. It may not be that impactful. While writing itself, you would think that I'm repeating few points, I'm repeating these topics or few points that I've gathered. Right? So that is why I consider this year question papers a very different one, where you have very, very less chance of scoring really high. But then, yes, there will be people, I'm sure those people who will even go up to like 50, 55%, more than 55%. Also, we expect some people to score in this exam, in this particular question paper. Okay, coming to this question here is the significance of ecotourism in relation to the socio-economic development. So first of all, we know that eco or ecological tourism has been increasing over the years. The ecotourism is a new sector of tourism or a sub-branch of tourism that has been flourishing in different parts. It's a thriving industry, especially with the recognition of biodiversity hotspots, rather biodiversity conservation regions like reserves, like parks, sanctuaries, zoological and botanical gardens, right? It increases the ecotourism. Now, what is the social significance here? Economic significance that we can understand, it contributes to GDP, overall tourism contributes to GDP, and ecotourism is also contributing. What about the social significance? The social significance is that it helps in building, it builds awareness, right? Increases awareness levels, right? Awareness about what? Awareness about environment, awareness about, how to conserve species, what should we do? Then also supports traditional practices. The blend of modern practices with the traditional practices. That is how it, like handloom and handicraft industries gets a support by this. So that is also one of the major aspects that we can get out of this, right? The value and aesthetics that is involved with the biodiversity and biodiversity conservation, that also improves with the ecotourism. Now, so far as the economic aspects are concerned, see, overall tourism, we'll just talk about tourism a bit here. Tourism You would say that it's a employment provider, a large employment provider in some regions. Almost it is providing employment to 8% of the population, rather 8% of employment, rather not population, is tourism based, out of which ecotourism is also increasing. Out of this 8%, the percentage of ecotourism has gone relatively higher. It's increasing because the people who are involved with that conservation, they're also getting employment opportunities, the higher production. Now, tourism also contributes to GDP, roughly around 9% of the contribution to GDP. And ecotourism indirectly, therefore, also contributes to the GDP. So this is one of the economic aspect in economic development. And with this practices, economy and ecology or environment, they can be balanced. Can be balanced. And hence biodiversity conservation will get more promotion, because people who visit to biodiversity hots, biodiversity conservation regions like reserves or national parks and all that, they also generate revenue. And that also helps in the establishment or maintenance of these. Then comes next aspect. I guess ये question आप खुद से, like, again, does not require much description. This is one of the easier questions, I guess. Discuss the reserves, distribution and production of all varieties of coal in India. So far as a variety of coal is concerned, one of the way to define variety is the carbon content, based on the carbon content. Based on the carbon content, we have best quality is the anthracite coal. Second is the bituminous coal. Third is the lignite coal. And fourth one is the peat. That is peat. So anthracite, bituminous, lignite, peat. This is one of the type of the, and we know that most of the coal that we find in India is bituminous coal. It is not the anthracite coal, right? Anthracite is only found in one region in Jammu and Kashmir, in the 𝐾𝐤𝐾𝐲 region. Otherwise, it's a bituminous coal that we find in most parts of the region, right? So based on the carbon content. Second is based on the age. First is Gondwana coal. Majority of coal, 90% of coal that India has is the Gondwana coal, right? Formed in the roughly in the Gondwana period, or which is around 250 million years before the present. That is the Gondwana coal. Everywhere we find Gondwana coal, right? Most peninsular parts, the Gondwana coal is formed. Second is the tertiary coal, which is largely found in the Himalayan region. So is the Himalayan belt, like Assam, Makum region, in Jammu and Kashmir, tertiary coal is found, and Gondwana found in peninsular part of India. Up anthracite coal, as I said, only in Jammu and Kashmir it is found in 𝐾𝐤𝐾𝐲 region. Bituminous coal is found in most of the regions in Jharkhand. All the mines you need to mention, not all of them, sorry, some of them examples in the Chota Nagpur region, in Chhattisgarh region. Lignite coal, however, is found in Jammu and Kashmir. It is found in Nai Valley in Tamil Nadu, right? Peat is almost negligible. It's just a piece of brown coal, a piece of burnt wood, otherwise less. So bituminous coal in Jharkhand, in Chhattisgarh, Odisha, can mention these. So reserves, distribution and production. Now production of coal, and towards the conclusion of this issues likhega, what are the issues related with the coal production? Increases environmental issues associated with it, the social issues, because coal mining does lead to the migration or displacement of population. But I guess easier question है ये, तो आप इसमें ज़्यादा discussion करने की ज़रूरत नहीं है. Salient features of east flowing rivers, right? Salient features of east flowing rivers. So what are east flowing rivers? देखो, Himalayan rivers are also, some of the Himalayan rivers are also east flowing rivers, like Ganga is an east flowing river and its tributaries. But largely east flowing rivers, when we refer to, is the peninsular India. So the characteristics of river Ganga, that it becomes voluminous, flowing towards east. Only after Haridwar it flows towards east, and then some mention that needs some mention. Then salient features of east flowing rivers, largely the peninsular rivers, right? Most of them originate in Western Ghats, flow towards east. Most of them flow through the fault lines, right? Flow through fault lines. Do not meander, move straight. Some rivers and their tributaries you can mention, like Godavari, Krishna, Kaveri, all are east flowing rivers, including Mahanadi, right? And some of them also find the trellis pattern, whereas Ganga forms the dendritic pattern, right? Then you can also mention about the vertical erosion, or rather the more of the lateral erosion that happens here, and because it flows through the rift valleys. So the salient feature of east flowing rivers of India, which is, I guess, and also do mention the percentage. In terms of the number, there are around 76% of Indian rivers that flow towards east, and around, if I go by volume, 90% of volume drains towards east. So some of the aspects that you need to mention, and the obviously delta formation. At east flowing rivers or form delta, they are having lesser slope. The Eastern Ghats slope is lesser, deposition is more, and they form more deposition landforms than the west flowing rivers, especially the Western Ghat rivers. They do not form depositional plains as such. ये basic differences हैं जो आपको इसमें mention करना है. Next is critically examine interstate border disputes. Section B पे चलते हैं हम. बहुत simple सा question आया है. Salient features of Project Tiger in India. I mean, can't get an easy question like this. इससे आसान question तो हम expect भी नहीं करेंगे exam में. At UPSC exams, we don't expect easier question than this. Salient features of Project Tiger. The key points that you need to mention here, or should not. So obviously it started in 1973. The key is that it's a keystone species, right? Keystone species. A good health of tiger, or population of tiger rather, good number of population of tiger, ensures that there's a higher herbivores, adequate number of herbivores. An adequate number of herbivores means there are adequate number of producers. So it's like the significance is top to bottom. So salient features में भी यही देखेंगे कि what were the salient features of Project Tiger. How did it start? What are the different conservation methods? So first was habitat specific. We focused on habitat. We focused on the conservation through food production, increase the breeding, use GPS to track the population of tiger, census to be conducted. So these are different aspects. But जहाँ पर important aspect है, you have to mention that tiger being a keystone species, having higher population or optimum population of tiger ensures that there's a higher percentage of herbivores, and it also ensures that there are adequate number of producers. So it ensures an equilibrium. So Project Tiger was one of the major projects started to for the species conservation, और यहाँ से आप शुरू कर सकते हैं टाइगर रिजर्व्स, टाइगर एस्पेक्ट्स, तो हैबिटेट कंजर्वेशन से लेकर के टैगिंग एंड ऑल्सो अंडरस्टैंडिंग द हाउ टू ट्रैक दीज स्पीशीज. Describe the problems of cloudburst. This was your next question, and give suitable examples in India. What are the problems associated with a cloudburst? तो पहले तो definition चाहिए थोड़ा बहुत cloudburst का. A condition where rainfall is at the rate of 100 mm per hour, right, and stretches for around 20 to 30 square kilometer of area is considered as a cloudburst condition. Right? एक simple definition देंगे जो IMD ने दिया है. Indian Meteorological Department has defined cloudburst as a condition of abundant rain at the rate of 1000 millimeters. I beg your pardon, 1000 millimeters per hour, not 100 meters. 100 millimeters, it's 1000 millimeters per hour, stretching for about 20 to 30 kilometers, square kilometers of an area. Now, problems pe chalna hai seedha. You don't have to give the cause of cloudburst as such. You can write that frequency of cloudburst has increased over the years. Right? The frequency of cloudburst has increased over the years. जैसे कि right? Out comes flash floods. Problems, it leads to the cloudburst, flash floods. There's submergence, intense erosion, right, that occurs in these regions. Right, due to cloudburst. Displacement of population has happened because of cloudburst. So the problem of the cloudburst is increasing. आप लिखेंगे it is one of the, like, climate change has increased the incidence of cloudburst, has increased the frequency of cloudburst. The reason for that is because higher evaporation. Higher rate of evaporation. That higher rate of evaporation has increased the moisture content in clouds, and sometimes that can cause a massive rainfall, and that massive rainfall has been the reason, has been defined as the cloudburst conditions, leading to landslides, flash floods, displacement, intense erosion. Examples have been asked, so there have been a lot of, in fact, examples of the cloudburst, and some of the recent examples abhi de sakte hain aap, aur kuch examples that have taken place in the past, right? Mumbai floods in 2005, right? Problems. Mumbai floods in 2005 were outcome of flash floods. Prior to that, of a cloudburst in Pithoragarh in 1995, there was a cloudburst. 2013, Uttarakhand cloudburst, Uttarkashi cloudburst. 2014, Kashmir cloudburst, leading to floods. Right? Some of the examples you have to quote, and there every year, in fact, there are cloudbursts. Like last year, 2021, also there were cloudbursts in Jammu and Kashmir. There were cloudbursts in Himachal Pradesh. Right? So, but Mumbai floods ko dena bahut zaruri, because it was one of that cloudburst, right? That actually gave us a new idea about cloudburst, that it is not confined only to the hilly areas, but can also take place in plains. It can also take place in other areas. So cloudburst is not just the thundering and scattering of light here and there, but also it is associated with the amount of rainfall that occurs, the rate at which the rainfall is taking place. So these are the aspects. And if the early forecast is not mentioned, right, it is sudden and can cause a lot of destructions. Next point is associated with the role of, next question was role of watershed management for soils and water conservation in hilly areas. So I guess afforestation, soil management, water conservation are these integral part of watershed management. What is the only difficult part or have to understand in hilly areas? So watershed in hilly areas, you can take examples of Himachal Pradesh, watershed conservation. You can also take examples in Jammu and Kashmir, Ladakh region, Ladakh, Union Territory of Ladakh, where watershed management is done. This has increased the soil conservation, right? That is one of the major aspect or major component of watershed management. कि soil erosion रोकेंगे by the programs of afforestation and also increasing water literacy so as the water conservation can be done. So ये भी एक ऐसा टॉपिक है जहां पर हम ज्यादा डिस्कस नहीं करेंगे because simple aspect है. Okay, now comes one typical geography based question. The question is related to migration, but question is critically examine relevance of Ravenstein's law in population migration with reference to India. Now, when we refer to the population migration of India, what are the different, you can say, features of migration of India? Features. There are rural to rural migration, rural to urban migration, there is urban to rural migration, there is urban to urban migration. Yeah, Miss Kwasi. Urban to urban migration, urban to rural migrations. Generally, when you look at the migration, intrastate migration, not interstate, intrastate migration, rural to rural migration is maximum, covering more than 50% of the total migration. Rural to urban migration and urban to urban migration are almost the same, like around 20% and 20% of the migration. And there is also certain amount of urban to rural migration. Now, how do we connect it to the Ravenstein's law? और उसके बाद critical examine भी करेंगे. First aspect is the relevance here. As per the Ravenstein model of or migration, laws of migration, he says, looking at Indian condition, that natives of rural, although it is not the first statement, rural population, natives of rural areas are more migratory. More migratory. So if we sum up rural to rural and rural to urban migration, right, rural to urban migration or rural migration, that comprises of more than 70%, like in fact 75% of the migration is from rural areas. अब वो rural sector में है या urban areas में, doesn't matter, but the rural population is more migratory. So you can understand that R2R plus R2U migration is maximum in India. ये maximum है, दोनों को ऐड कर दें अगर हम, तो almost more than 75% of the migration is from the rural areas. The origin is rural areas. Okay. Then he says that females are more migratory than males. Migratory than males over short distances. And under this rural to rural migration, right, if we see this as 100%, majority of the migrants are females. Majority of migrants are females. In fact, around 64% of the migration is of females because of the marriage. Rural to rural areas, which is a shorter distance. So Ravenstein का second law भी apply होता है when you look at the female migration in India, the composition of migration. Then look at the in case of the interstate migration, in case of interstate migration, rural to urban migration is maximum. Rural to urban migration is maximum. So he says that migration occurs as per the Ravenstein law. Migration is towards a major urban centers. Major urban centers, which is a center of commerce and trade. Migration occurs in a region which is a great center of commerce and trade. And rural to urban migration, majority of the migration takes place to Mumbai, followed by Delhi. सबसे ज्यादा माइग्रेशन जो होता है वो मुंबई में होता है, and then it is followed by Delhi. Largest migrants come from eastern, Uttar Pradesh overall, Bihar, and then Madhya Pradesh, West Bengal. So mainly from the agricultural belts and then move towards Mumbai and all that. So rural and urban areas largest. Now then it occurs in series that say so wo jo series wala part hai, that which is called a sequent occupation, that is not applied in India. Even if it is applied, it doesn't hold true to a great extent. But he says that to every current of migration, there is a counter current. There is a counter current of migration. That counter current of migration can be seen in urban to rural population as well. There is rural to urban migration, which is roughly around 7% of the migration. So reverse migration bhi hai. The counter migration is also taking place because people are moving from urban to rural areas. Whatever are the reasons. So यहाँ पर लगता है कि Ravenstein के बहुत सारे laws, most of the laws of Ravenstein do apply in Indian conditions. But because it's critically examined, तो हम और डिटेल में देखते हैं. Some of the laws do not apply, like Ravenstein's laws are not fully applicable, in interstate migration. So according to the migration laws, it is more rural to urban migration. But India में rural to rural migration ज़्यादा है. As per him, he says that most of the migration takes place towards the center of commerce and trade. But some of its laws are not applicable in intrastate, like rural to rural migration is more in India, which is again an abrogation, like it is not again according to Ravenstein's law, which says that most of the migration takes place towards urban centers. हालांकि हमने यहाँ यूज किया और ये भी लिखा कि interstate it is true, intrastate it is not true. And this is how you can apply. Then again a challenging question. Why is it challenging? Because both questions are like typical geography questions, and where you can apply them, you can write them in a full question, but यहाँ short note में पूछा गया है. Ashok Mitra's classification of Indian cities. Ashok Mitra, who was as Registrar General of Census Board 1961-71, has given a classification of Indian cities. So एक introduction जरूर देना यहाँ पर, that the functional classification of Indian cities has been attempted. Classification has been attempted by many geographers, including Ashok Mitra, who talks about identified 9 activities, urban economic activities. which are practiced in different cities of India, including. So sequence क्या है? Sequence should not be missed. It is cultivation. Second is agricultural labor. Third is forestry, mining, etc. Fourth is household. Fifth is manufacturing. Sixth is construction. Seventh is trade. Eighth is transport. Ninth is services. There are 9 activities you have to mention, and sequentially you'll have to remember all of them, and then mention which is the cultivation cities. So, or which is the forest-based cities, household cities, manufacturing. Then he says that transport, trade, and services, right? There are other activities also involved. So they are almost similar to each other, trade and transport and services, because here we can understand manufacturing towns or those towns where activity 5 is greater than right, activity 4 and 5 rather is greater than 6 is greater than 1 plus 2 plus 3, right, is greater than. So you can classify this. That's Ashok Mitra's classification. और उसके बाद जब उन्होंने कहा कि जो 3 है, trade, transport and services, they have wider connotations. So he tries this triangle method, equilateral triangle: services, trade, transport, and in the center are regions, right? This is the first ring, second, third, where all the 3 services are equal, 33% of all the 3 services. That is highly diversified, right? Then we have the specialized industries, right? Industry activities which are accentuated. तो वो एक classification है जो बहुत typical way है Indian classification का. This is the question which should give you good marks. इसमें कोई गलती नहीं होना चाहिए, because इससे straightforward question नहीं आएगा. You can't expect a straightforward question like this. Although it is also the part of your paper 1. Ashok Mitra classification can also ask you in your paper 1. But चूंकि Indian industries के लिए दिया था, तो mostly it is in paper 2. Then again, the impact of tropical cyclone and western disturbances on climate of India. देखो 2 अलग-अलग conditions दी पूछी गई हैं. Tropical cyclones, the impact of tropical cyclones is very devastating. Right? The impact of tropical cyclone is quite devastating, as in it causes flash floods. तो आप लिख सकते हैं उसमें, ऐसा नहीं है. Then it causes soil erosion, it causes displacement, right? So all these disaster aspects. Western disturbances, however, are temperate cyclones which originate in the Mediterranean Sea region and enter and reach towards India through these jet streams. What is the impact? Impact is that it, number 1, intensifies winters, intensify winter conditions in Himalayan regions, leads to snowfall or sometimes heavy precipitation, rainfall in northern plains, right? That helps in the ripening of Rabi crops. That's very important for the ripening of Rabi crops. And also sometimes intensify the subtropical high pressure belt. Western disturbances, that's all. ऐसा लगता है कि ये वाला question जो है, that should have been asked for the short note. So you have to explain tropical cyclone and impacts of cyclone including flash floods, और यहां थोड़ा और impactful कैसे बना सकते हैं आप, by mentioning the categories of cyclone. Categories of cyclone, like first it is storm, right? Then there's a cyclonic storm, then there's severe cyclone, then there is a severe, very severe cyclone, very severe cyclone, and then it's a super cyclone. So since it is only about cyclones, so we'll talk about severe and severe super cyclone only. The rainfall, the wind speed is more than 220 kilometers per hour and can be very devastating. High tidal rise, floods, flash floods, erosion. And after cyclones, it can also lead to some epidemics because waterborne diseases can increase. So disaster aspect आपको cyclone का लिखना है यहाँ पर, और temperate cyclones का या western disturbances का जो impact है वो, I mean, it's not that devastating, it's not that destructive, unless if it is a very heavy snowfall in the Himalayan regions. Right? This is the only aspect. Yeah, sometimes the western disturbances are very strong and that can destroy the standing crops of wheat in northern plains. Otherwise, it's not heavy. It's a relatively better influence than tropical cyclones. So this is the pattern of the question that has been asked. Like, we can go on to discuss some more questions like groundwater issues in India, relief of Deccan Plateau, then Panchayati Raj, corridor of, these Bangalore-Mumbai corridors. Then likewise, command area development program in eliminating the regional, inequalities and so on. So the point here is the questions that have been asked this year are quite, I would say, so if you see this question 2021 question paper, geography optional question paper 2021, the question that have been asked are quite, within the limits, paper 1 as well as paper 2, although there were little more challenging questions in paper 1. Paper 2, however, every aspirant will go prepared with these questions. Every aspirant, faces a challenge that the questions are sometimes very general, except 2 or 3 geography based questions. A lot of questions seem to be very general questions, can also be asked in the general studies. But while writing answers for your optionals, you have to increase some geographical component to it, like climatic component, like natural factors, like geomorphic factors, and also correlate, if possible, in some of the answers, if possible, correlate these regions, correlate these aspects into the paper 1, into paper 2. And also try to draw more diagrams and more graphs, more maps. Like, for example, in this question also, when we talk about this cyclone and western disturbances, you can also show in the map that which regions experience more cyclones, right? And what is the impact of cyclones. So you can probably draw this map of India again in your answers, and show that India has a huge coastline, 7,517 kilometers of coastline. So these are regions which are having more influence of tropical cyclones, and these are regions where impact of western disturbances can be observed, right? So this is how, and quote few examples also in terms of cyclones, right? So ऐसे diagrams आप draw कर सकते हैं ताकि, like, so that you can make it more applicable, right? You can make it more applicable, and therefore this year's question papers, we hope to get good results in geography. As we said in the paper 1, paper 2 also shows that the geography results should be much better this year, and we expect better marks because questions are within the expected limits, and people should be prepared with these questions, right? So rest of the questions are quite general. We can think of like a very straightforward questions, or agriculture was not as much as we expect every year, right? So industry also, just one question on industries, right? This is how we place this year's question paper, but you can see the emphasis on water resources, the question on interstate water, interlinking of river, the question on groundwater crisis, the question on the drought as a severe climatic impact. This was also asked. So there is some more emphasis. If you look at and analyze this question paper, you would see that more emphasis is on drought and water management in India. So that is it in the discussion. So I hope to get a good results. Wish you all the very best for all of you, those who have taken mains this year, and hope that all of you get through this mains exam and an interview as well, and get through this within this attempt itself. So best of luck, and see you sometime in the future with other discussions. Thank you.